to Tech Diva Biz Talks, where we tune in, dive deep, and level up. I'm your host, Audrey Wiggins, aka the Tech Diva, brand strategist, marketing mind, and your guide through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Let's talk tech. Hello, Tech Diva Nation. How are you doing today? I'm excited as usual. We have our guest. His name is Alexander Harmsen. He's a techpreneur, a tech entrepreneur. He's passionate about AI. I love that subject. Finance. Okay, we can can that one. But and autonomy. But we're going to learn some stuff there, okay? All right, more than 1 + 1 = 2. He founded PortfolioPilot.com, an AI financial advisor with over $30 billion in assets on platform. So that was the time of this recording. Previously, he founded and sold Iris Automation, which he worked on NASA's Mars helicopter. That's awesome, Alex. He went through Y Combinator. He's raised over $30 million in venture capital and was recognized by Forbes 30 Under 30. So we'd have to put those two together, like 60 over 60, for me. So we're gonna start that new trend there. Have you heard it first here on Tech Diva Biz Talks? Alex, welcome to Tech Diva Biz Talks.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here.
Awesome. All right. So let's get into some questions here. I know I always like to ask my guests their fun fact. So if you have one you want to share with us?
Yeah, very early on, I was set on being an astronaut. And, obviously there's sort of the Halloween costume and, sort of grade school. But, I remember very explicitly like making a list and researching and trying to get in contact with former astronauts. And, I got my scuba diving license because that's a requirement. I got my pilot license. That's a requirement. I got my STEM degree. I participated in a whole bunch of military stuff.
Wow.
And then I feel like when I was actually had the application form in front of me, I just bailed, just decided this is not for me. Obviously really cool. And I definitely will get into space one day, but more likely on the private side and space tourism. I think I finally realized that if I was to be an astronaut, then it basically meant that every hour of my life would be controlled by somebody else and controlled by the government and arguably working on some of the coolest stuff you can think of. But I just couldn't stand the idea that the next, 30 years of my life would be planned out for me with this heavy investment from the government and all this training and missions and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And it sent me on this completely different path down entrepreneurship, which sort of feels the exact opposite direction of just everything is in my control. And, whether I work the next hour or not, directly has an impact on how good the business becomes. And so it kind of feels like I get to chart my own path and, I got a lot of cool stuff out of it.
Yeah, you got those 2 licenses. Are you kidding? That's awesome.
Scuba diving in the Bahamas. Every time I think about scuba diving now, I'm picturing going along the bottom and having this absolutely massive, probably 6-foot diameter turtle, just coming up right beside me. And, I've done a fair amount of private flying, and in college, this was an excellent way to make friends and just, take some friends up flying in the mountains and, split costs. And so, all in all, not too bad. But I feel like that could have been, looking back, that could have been a completely different path for me.
Yeah, and your personality probably wouldn't be coming through like it is right now. a little more tense and okay, I've got to get to that next thing,
Yeah, it's already what is it? 0400 and
Sponsored by Altogether Domains, bringing your business online. Whether you are launching a new venture or leveling up your brand, altogetherdomains.com helps you secure your digital real estate the smart way. Visit altogetherdomains.com. First up then, or second up, whichever how we want to count it. So, portfoliopilot.com, making waves. Okay, so you're still making some waves out there, right? Some contrails, excuse me. Okay, so it's making waves in the investment world. Not my most experience, I'm about tech, but which we will get into, but we're going to learn some stuff today too from you. Okay, so what was your light bulb moment for creating it, and how was it rewriting the rules for how everyday people manage their money?
Yeah, a lot of stuff packed into that question. And, I love it. I think they're like the common narrative, and it feels easy to think like just at some point the idea came, and the next day, it was $1 billion company. We IPO'd on Wall Street. I think in reality, my background is engineering, physics, and economics, and so that's what I studied in school. Basically a lot of modeling and mathematics, and taking our very complex world that we live in and trying to break it down to something easy to understand, something we can do something with and make decisions based on. Like you said, I worked at NASA and a bunch of other companies and startups, and then started my previous company in autonomous vehicles, right? Nothing to do with finance or investing. And I've had my, little crypto portfolio and made some good decisions and make some bad decisions. And I have a Robinhood account and my 401k and an IRA, and I'm married and I have kids and 529s. And, so I built and sold that company over the course of 7 years. And then afterwards, we basically, sold the company, transitioned out, and suddenly I had nothing to do. It was sort of like, it was the height of COVID. We had a baby, we bought a house, trying to fill my life and trying to see, let's like add something else, trying to figure out what the next venture is. My wife also runs a startup. I mean, startup is such a loose term, right? I mean, they're 7 years in, they've raised $25 million, and they're working with the FDA and the Mayo Clinic, and like they're working on clinical trials with pharma companies and killing it. She's actually the smart one in our relationship. PhD in
She's
cancer
absolutely
research.
brilliant.
And so I was trying to figure out what to do, and I'm having calls with investors and other friends, other founders and startup folks and tech experts. And, in 2021, 22, and 22, I'm like walking around, social distancing, with a baby strapped to my chest. And I must have started 50 different companies, sort of back of a napkin, documents, talking to people, prototyping some stuff. I hadn't really coded in like 5 years. And so it was fun to, take my coding gloves out and, get into it a little bit again. And then at the same time, we're talking to financial advisors and planners and wealth managers and private bankers. It's the first time in my life that we had any sort of money, right? Liquid money. And so I just couldn't stand the idea of paying someone else, 1% of my net worth every single year to manage my money in a fairly cookie cutter portfolio. We sold it and it was a good outcome, but it wasn't, I'm a billionaire rich outcome, right? And so I'm not building my own family office and hire lawyers just to deal with my financial situation. And so, some of these wealth managers, they have 100 different clients at the same time. They charge 1%, and they all put you into the same portfolio that they manage for you. And they're great salespeople, and they make you feel like, they are quote unquote experts. But, the real finance experts are working on Wall Street, right? They're not doing financial advisory services. I thought maybe I'm getting introduced to the wrong people. I probably spoke to 20 different financial advisors trying to find the right one. And in every first conversation, second conversation, they were able to point out sort of optimization opportunities in my current financial situation. But beyond that, it felt like there wasn't really anything personalized that they could give me, and I couldn't stomach the fees. And so I decided to just build something for myself, because there's There's 1,001 trading tools out there for active investors, and Bloomberg terminal lights for the day trader, and trading signals and WhatsApp forums and Wall Street bets. And I didn't really want to get into that world. That's not me.
Uh-huh.
And there's robo advisors like Betterment and Schwab and Fidelity, and it also sort of felt like lowest common denominator advice. And in 2021, 2022, are we in a bubble? What's happening with inflation? Fed is printing a ton of money. Are we like, is the bubble going to pop, and are we going to collapse? How do I think about my house? How do I think about college saving, long-term retirement planning, estate planning, insurance? I mean, there's so many things to think about. And so I sort of put it all into the software that I was building. And that the idea was mostly just, I'm going to use this for myself. And, at the end of every month, I would run it, and it would crunch through, millions of combinations and changes and optimization opportunities. It would take about 6 hours, really inefficient. And then it would give me a list of 20 recommendations about, like, Alex, you should do these things. And the first couple versions, out of the 20 things, maybe 4 of them were useful. But even that, me filtering out that list, thinking like, okay, there's 4 useful things that I can actually do to optimize my financial situation, cut down on fees, save a little bit on taxes, build in a little bit more downside protection without losing returns. That helped me feel more in control. It helped me feel like I'm actually doing something. The more I worked on this, hobby project, the more I talked to other people about it, the more it felt like I'm actually onto something real here. Financial advice hasn't really changed in the last 1,000 years. There is the quote unquote expert that you go to, you give him your money, they tell you, okay, we're on track, you're in good hands. And then you show up in retirement and you withdraw some money, and, you hope that the fees that you pay outweigh get outweighed by the positive impact of having a, quote unquote expert involved in your finances.
Yeah.
But there's
So
so many tools now that could actually help you do that. And AI can get really, really personalized. And so we can bring the actual expert opinions and expertise down to your specific situation. And like you said, it's taken off like crazy. We actually needed to become a registered investment advisor with the SEC and take on a fiduciary responsibility. And I needed to write a bunch of exams. And I'm now a Series 65 licensed investment advisor representative, so I can babysit the model, things like that. It's
you know what? Just go back to when you went to college and decided you wanted to be an astronaut. It's the process of deciding. So it's not a waste of time that you did that. Aside from the fact that we talked about before about getting the 2 licensings, certifications out of it. So when you brought all of that experience, that process and systematic experience into developing your companies, and now this tool is still your business, but portfoliopilot.com. I think that's awesome. So give us, I don't know if you want to finish anything else in that point, but if you do, but after that.
No, I'm completely with you, right? Honestly, a lot of it's just been fun.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm constantly learning things. I'm just like an extremely curious person. And so I think every couple months I like start getting bored with something, and that feels like the right moment to automate it or get some AI involved or pass it on to someone else on the team or hire someone new so I can move on to something more interesting, that's actually going to move the business forward.
Yeah.
And it's been like that for, I don't know, 15, 20 years now. Just keeps getting more fun.
Wow. Okay. So give us the VIP tour, though. Okay. How does portfolio.com's AI actually work behind the scenes, and what makes it smarter and maybe easier than the traditional financial advisor?
There's a few different things, right? One thing is that we're simply just way cheaper than a financial advisor. Most financial advisors are charging, around 1%, something like that. And, if you have $1 million sort of in your portfolio retirement accounts, everything, we're talking about $10,000 a year. Our annual plan is $240 a year. $20 a month, less than a cup of coffee, blah, blah, blah. And so, we specifically tried to make it inexpensive. And the main thing is that there's not a human in the loop. And so we can make it, relatively inexpensive to everything else out there. And we have incredible margins that investors love, our venture capital investors love it, for that as well, right? It's incrementally very cheap to just onboard a new person. We don't need to hire hire and train another, human financial advisor. And so for most people, they come to portfoliopilot.com, they create a free account, they answer a bunch of onboarding questions. Simple stuff like, what are my financial goals? What do I actually care about at the moment? Long-term, short-term, risk profile, tax situation, net worth, things like that. And then we ask you to import one account. Could be take a screenshot of your account, could be link it directly through Plaid, could be upload a statement, manually type it in, and then we'll give you a portfolio assessment. And so we'll say, Audrey, you are on track for retirement, in all the different scenarios that we run, you have an 86% chance of, hitting all your retirement goals. Here's your current portfolio score. Here's what you're doing really good. Here's some optimization opportunities, right? Here's some stuff that you're sort of falling behind on, what we could give you some lift. And then here's how you compare to your peers. People your same age, people your same risk profile, and people of like the same net worth. At the core, Portfolio Pilot is just a free portfolio tracker. You can add everything, cash accounts, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, real estate, student debt, private debt, angel investments, gold bars under your bed, whatever, makes up your net worth. Add it in. We give you that assessment. You can run that assessment as many times as you want. There's this retirement planning tool that's at the core of the product. And so adding in, we run 1,000 different scenarios and different market conditions from where you are right now through retirement and then beyond. And we model out distributions and basically show you in the best case scenario, in the worst case scenario. Most people want to prepare for the worst case scenario, right? You want to get, as close to 99% of all these scenarios. I'm going to be fine. Add in life expectancy, add in different events, college, marriage, divorce, whatever you want to model out to get a little bit more confidence. And then if you actually want to pay for the product, $20 a month, it unlocks this fiduciary financial advice. And so we'll give you very specific suggestions, Audrey, based on your long-term plans, based on what we understand about your goals, based on what's currently in your investment portfolio, in your other accounts. We think you're leaving money on the table. You should buy XYZ ETFs. You should sell this position. This is how much you're going to pay in taxes. The market's just dipped, and so here's these tax loss harvesting opportunities for you. You're paying way too much in fees in this mutual fund. We think it's time for you to roll over this 401k to an IRA. You're going to save this amount in management fees. We know you have 2 kids, and so you should think about guardianship for your kids. You haven't updated that in 2 years. You're paying too much in life insurance. I mean, there's so many things that you can improve about your financial situation. And so the idea that Portfolio Pilot will proactively monitor that and call out these suggestions for you. And then still at the end of the day, you decide, yes, that's a good idea. Yes, that's a good idea. No, ignore that, right? Don't touch my emergency fund. I want to keep it just as it is. That helps the system learn and give better recommendations next month. And it also means that you are more in control. Zooming way out, we have a very simple goal, simply just helping you end up with a little bit more money in retirement and feeling a little bit more in control of your finances. And, there's 1,000 different ways that we can do that and help you.
Okay. So totally out of my element, then let's talk investor oops moments.
Yeah.
What are the top blunders that you see us make with our portfolios, and how can AI step in and save the day?
I think it's always to me how often the same kind of mistakes come up. And I think most people know that, right? I think there's almost everyone that I talk to has some sort of fear and greed that they're trying to control, the fear that I'm missing out on something, right? Is there something I'm doing wrong? Is there something I'm not doing right? Am I leaving money on the table? And then there's the greed, right? My friend just, he is invested way more in Bitcoin than I did, 4 years ago, and look at him now. Or, maybe I should push the risk a little bit more, and maybe I should invest in Tesla after all, or whatever it is, right? And so part of it is just psychology and just sort of helping people have a North Star, having a second opinion, involved in their finances. Very common things that people, I think, miss out on. The number one most common thing is not, missing the next Tesla or missing the next Nvidia. I think most people focus on that because it's kind of exciting to be a stock picker. And, for most people, even the ones that, bet on Nvidia in the early days, it's less than 5% of their portfolio. And, in the grand scheme of things, isn't really going to make the difference. A very common mistake that people make is simply just leaving cash in a checking account uninvested. And however much it is, money moves around, you get a paycheck, you transfer from one account to another. Sometimes there's rollovers and your 401k plan sends you an email, and you ignore it because, I get so many of those emails, and, they've decided to draw up one of their funds and they're going to leave the money in cash. You think it's compounding, year over year. But then when you finally check it, you realize it hasn't been making any money. It's actually been losing value because of inflation, for the last 5 years. And so the idea of just putting it into a money market fund or some some treasury that makes a couple percent, is oftentimes more than what you can get in a savings or a checking account, because those values are relatively low at this point. I don't know why, but Bank of America or Wells Fargo just rarely has much in their savings accounts, even though it feels like intuitively, if I'm putting money in a savings account, I'm going to get the highest possible savings rate. That's oftentimes not the case. People don't really think about tax optimization. It's so boring, right? And doing taxes even once a year together with TurboTax is brutal. I have to collect all my statements at different accounts and I have to coordinate.
I always file the extension, give my CPA. Can you just put
Yeah, just push it off another 6 months, another 8 months. And so, what happens very often is that there are tax optimization opportunities that appear throughout the year. That if you do it once at the end of the year, those optimization opportunities are just gone. We ran a study, Portfolio Pilot users saved $11 million in taxes in 2024. These are not small numbers, right? This is a really big deal. We've considered just putting that on the front of our website and saying look, we'll help you optimize your taxes. It converts low. People don't respond well to that. We're leading with AI stuff and finance, but it's possible that just the tax stuff will pay for itself, if you use Portfolio Pilot. And then, maybe the other thing is that a lot of people think about their portfolio is simply just bonds and stocks. And I have stocks for returns. That's where I'm going to get my growth. And I have bonds almost like a brake, my car to slow things down and help with downside protection. In reality, it just doesn't work like that. Especially in high inflation environments, like we saw over the last couple of years, the bonds lose value, the equities lose value historically. What do you do? How do you build a more diversified portfolio? How do you think about real estate and commodities and all these other things? Also, just immediately feel super complex. A big part of what we're trying to do with Portfolio Pilot is just make that more guided. It's possible that the most important feature in the entire product is simply just an email that we send once a month at the start of every month. And we say, Audrey, based on what we see in markets, based on what we have in our database, based on your preferences, your current positions, here's 3 things that you should do for the month of September, 1, 2, 3, should take you less than 10 minutes to execute, increase your portfolio score, get you a little bit closer to your retirement plan. And that's it. If you want to do more, go ahead, dive into the product and click on everything. If that's the minimum you want to do, that's fine. We're here to just nudge you along and, help you be a little bit more in control. If we can get people sort of into that pattern, once a month, I look at my finances, I make a few adjustments and tweaks. If we do that for millions of people, we will have saved a tremendous amount, for Americans. And realistically, we're taking a lot of money out of the pockets of human financial advisors. But I think at the end of the day, there are probably unnecessary middlemen, in this world of AI.
Yeah, definitely. And the goal is in business, of course, to make money, but also to serve. And it seems like Portfolio Pilot is here to serve. So I'm going to ask you,
Exactly.
Another question then too, because you're scaling and this is scaling AI companies isn't for the faint of heart. So what's been your toughest challenge in growth mode? And how did you outsmart it?
Basically, over the last 2 years, I've just been trying to get on this Tech Diva podcast. I assume that once the podcast goes live, then millions of people will flock to us, and all of our marketing problems will have been solved.
It was a compliment, but but he didn't take 2 years for him to get it. A waiting list. Oh my gosh!
I love it. I mean, I think it's a lot of different things, right? I think that if you want to do something different, if we want to create a new category around AI financial advisors or personal financial intelligence, then you need to market in a different way and you need to use different tools. And, I like to think that the product is, interesting enough and useful enough that, people tell their friends about it. But, there's sort of a slow diffusion, right? So you want to juice that in some way. And I never really liked the idea of just, raising millions of dollars to throw it into ads and just pay it to Google and Facebook and, Reddit. And so there's a little bit of ads there, but, a big focus for us is actually AEO, answer engine optimization.
Oh, that's
And so basically, half of our users at this point come from ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Grok. And my pet theory is that, I like to think that, we've done a lot right in terms of SEO and FAQs and showing up properly in the world and earned media. But my pet theory is that, these AIs are specifically not allowed to give financial advice, but lots of people ask them for financial advice. And so a fairly common response is simply just I would like to help you. I can't give financial advice, but there are, if you want to use AI for financial advice, use Portfolio Pilots. Sign up here. This is the features they offer. Yeah. And so if we can get that to be the standard response for these AIs, that changes the game. The fact that we're a registered investment advisor with the SEC and we have a fiduciary responsibility and, we have to meet this very stringent SEC marketing rules as well, I think also means that, the chance that we're generating quote unquote AI slop, putting it on the internet is much lower. And so maybe these AIs can trust us a little bit more because of all the compliance stuff, and these SEC rules, they can count on that material having gone through some sort of compliance review.
Yeah.
And so there's a bunch that's working on our favor there. And ChatGPT and Sam Altman just last week announced that they have something like 700 million weekly active users at this point.
It's crazy.
Absolutely crazy. 10% of the human population, if we can get 0.1% of those queries coming up with something like, hey, I can't answer it for you, but Portfolio Pilot can answer it for you. That changes the game.
Absolutely. Right? Oh, wow. So looking into your crystal ball, then what's next for AI overall and where will we see the most jaw-dropping impact in the next 5 to 10 years, your opinion?
Super intelligence and, curing cancer and robotics and things like that. And don't get me wrong, really excited for that. And it's so uncertain what those timelines are, right? I think the biggest benefit of AI for most people will be the fact that you get an expert in your pocket. And the idea that you can, traditionally expertise was very expensive, sort of locked in these walled gardens, has now just been democratized. And so the idea that you can get personalized expertise, whether it's legal expertise or financial expertise or medical expertise, or I'm setting up a fitness regimen for myself, and the chance that I go on a blog and find a fitness regimen that is perfect for me is very low. But working with an AI fitness coach to specialize my diet for the things that I actually like and don't like, and what I'm willing to do and not willing to do, right? There's some things that appear on the blog that I'm just not willing to do, right? Just like I have limits to my person, what I'm willing to do with personal fitness. Give me the lowest hanging fruit from my body type and the things that I want to eat. And I don't want to compromise on X. And so the idea that you could bring that expertise to everybody and apply it to their individual situation, that changes humankind. Like, I think we're just scratching the surface of that.
Did you know 99% of people check their email every day, up to 20 times a day? It's the first thing people do online, even before looking at social media or other news. But viewers retain only 10% of what they read. Adding video to your email, their retention skyrockets to 95%. Video plus email equals success. It's time. The future of email is here. Goodbye, email. Hello, video email. Ready to ride the wave? Visit altogether.talkfusion.com.
All right, some little funny question here. If portfoliopilot.com were a person at a cocktail party, how would you describe the personality and what would they be sipping?
Interesting. Very intentionally, we don't want to come across as the pretentious know-it-all that's telling you how to live your life, right? We also don't want to be the frat bro, like just, bet it all on black, crypto, everything. Like, I think about us as sort of like the fun, knowledgeable older brother that has been doing this for a couple of years more than I have. It's not necessarily saying like, look, I'm the expert, just trust me. Like, it is too complex for you, Audrey. Just put it here. But is thinking like, okay, like, this guy is knowledgeable. He's willing to sit with me and sort of like explain things to me. I can have this sort of personal relationship with him. I think like that's very much the personality that we're going for. What are they drinking? There's classes of drinks here. It's like, you can get pretty deep on this question, right? There's classes of drinks, I feel like, in terms of the sort of like the frat bro to pretentious scale. I think they're probably drinking wine. Okay. And I think something, maybe a rum and Coke, something that they can sip on, enjoy, but it's not like so in your face that they need to brag about, specifically the region in Italy where this comes from, and, this one tour they did once upon a time, something like that.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. All right. So, Alex, this has been fun. We're not quite over yet. What's your website and how can we get in touch with you and so we can kind of go deeper on this journey?
Yeah, very simple. Portfoliopilot.com. And, like I said, there's a free account. There's a bunch of questions to answer to try to understand and personalize the product for you. We like to think that $20 is like absolutely worth it. I'm super biased. I don't want it to be like super promotional, but there's even a free trial there. And then I think my marketing guy would kill me if I didn't mention that, we have a promo code, simply just podcast, for a free month of gold if you go check it out.
Awesome.
And then I'm pretty active on Twitter. My handle is Alex Harm, or the company handle is Portfolio Pilots. Posting lots of interesting stuff there. I like to get as involved with our users as possible. So you can book an onboarding call too. I'm probably doing 3 or 4 onboarding calls every single day. Even though we have something like 30,000 users at this point, it's so much fun to meet people across the country. It helps me figure out exactly what's going on with the product, what's working, what's not working. We do a new release of the product, a new update to the product every single Monday evening. It's happening very quickly. If you report some issue on Tuesday, the chance that it makes it into the Monday release next week is pretty high.
Wow.
And so, we think that there's like something about that feedback loop and the age of AI and quick prototyping, rapid iteration that makes all the difference too.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of the reasons why I'm even, remotely confident that we can compete with a $1 billion company like Fidelity. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And their 10,000, human financial advisors.
Yes. Because at one point they were in your seat. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just a matter of time. Okay. Speaking of seat, I'm going to put you in the hot seat, Alexander Harmsen. All right. Rapid fire.
Let's do. I'm ready.
All right. First investment ever made, and was it genius or facepalm?
First investment ever made. I don't know exactly the first one, but the first memorable one was that I spent 6 hours setting up a Mt. Gox account to buy like a teeny tiny amount of crypto and Bitcoin, and then subsequently lost it all when like Mt. Gox went down, and there was like a whole criminal investigation. Not at me, around this exchange, overseas. Maybe I should go back and look at like what that would be worth now, but I think it would be make me very sad.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a facepalm one. All right. Coffee, tea, or code?
I've been trying to cut out coffee recently, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I think I'm down to like 1 latte a week at this point, and I've convinced myself I'm no longer addicted.
Okay.
I'm going to leave it there.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. One word that best describes AI's future in finance.
Personalization.
The app you can't live without besides your own. You can't choose.
Portfoliopilot.com.
Slack. We have a global distributed team, and I feel like I'm constantly just on Slack. And like the wonderful thing about this, like we're spread across a bunch of different time zones throughout the day. There's sort of different parts of the team that activate, and I'm like working on marketing in the morning. There's a bunch of product stuff and design in the afternoon, and a bunch of engineering stuff in the evening. And almost every single morning I wake up to 30 different Slack messages, and some of them are really urgent, like, Alex, you gotta get on a call, we gotta sort this thing out. But most of them are like, we released this new feature, we fixed this, and here's this marketing win. And so it just kind of feels like it's on all the time, and it's just alive. And I feel like that, around the clock, someone is working on building better financial advice for millions.
Awesome. Okay. If you weren't running an AI company, what would you be doing right now? Right now, Alex Harmsen.
Probably running a different kind of company, probably running a robotics company.
Oh,
and maybe that's cheating. There's obviously a whole bunch of AI stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe something in aerospace.
Company. Helicopter company, maybe, or something.
Yeah, maybe aerospace.
Okay.
Maybe drones, commercial package delivery, agricultural surveys. There is something like 1.5 million miles of pipeline in North America, and it gets inspected rarely. In my previous company, I was talking to an oil executive, and he basically said, look, we have community-based detection. I was like, what is that? I've never heard of that. He said, well, if there's an oil leak from the pipeline, then a member of the community inevitably at some point calls us up and says, hey, there's a bunch of oil in my field, and we go out and we fix it. So the idea that like you could use robotics or drones to be able to survey miles of pipeline to prevent environmental disasters, to help get rid of dull, dirty, dangerous jobs, and like help elevate humankind to work on more interesting stuff. Probably something in that line of work.
All right. The bull market or bear market, which one brings out your inner strategist?
One of the things that I have loved learning about over the last 5 years is that the entire original concept of hedge funds was basically to figure out a way to make money in bull markets or bear markets. Things go up, things go down, but if you can find a strategy that works regardless of what the rest of the market is doing, then you've really won, right? Then you basically, added a certain amount of downside protection. And I often think that, one of the beautiful things about Portfolio Pilot is that we should be able to help you make more money in bull markets and bear markets, when things are good, when things are bad. There are different kinds of optimization opportunities that come up depending on the current climate. It makes us, I think, very sticky, and it helps us plan very, very long term.
Morning routine must have.
I spend a whole bunch of time with my kids and breakfast and getting them dressed and ready for school and drop them off at their preschool. They're 4 and 2.5. They're so cute. And, 80% of the time, things go really, really well. And then 20%, absolute just crying on the floor. My kid this morning was he had 5 pennies that he has some chemistry set that we bought him. And one of the chemistry experiments is cleaning the pennies using salt and vinegar. And so he's been carrying around these clean, shiny pennies recently. And this morning he woke up and one of his pennies was gone.
Oh, no.
And we spent half an hour tearing the house apart. We finally found the penny. Thank God. But that's a huge part of the morning routine, and I love it. It's not as much fun always in the moment, dealing with the crying kid, but there's something very satisfying, at the end of the day, knowing that, that cycle is going to repeat again tomorrow. We get this time together to bond. Can't go wrong with that.
Elon Musk calls. Do you pick it up?
Of course. Okay. No matter what, it's going to be entertaining.
Yes, exactly. All right.
I don't think I've done anything to piss him off.
Nah. We're keeping it positive. He's calling for something good because you're both creators. I like that.
Exactly.
Innovators. Let's even step that up a little even higher there. Okay. Your go-to hyped song before a big pitch.
Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, I love it. Okay, next. Your go-to hype. Oh, I'm so excited about the hype song.
Eye of the Tiger again.
Ask you for a sec. This is crazy. I'm gonna leave
It's the Eye of the Tiger or the Final Countdown.
Okay. Yeah, both of those are good. Yeah. All right. I'm leaving that in. I love bloopers. In 3 words, the best money advice you've ever received.
Consistency and staying calm. And I'm going to assume that the end there's an ampersand. So that's 3 words.
Okay. You win. Well, Alex, this has been awesome. Really appreciate it. And again, Tech Diva Nation, be sure to get to portfoliopilot.com and then make sure you use the promo code podcast so you can set up your 1 free month of their gold plan. I think this is very exciting and a great entry point. Alex, any final advice or nugget you want to leave us with?
No, I loved it. I think we covered it all. You took us from astronauts to financial advice. And so I loved it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Glad you were able to be here.
That's it for today's Tech Diva Biz Talks. Hope you caught a gem or two. If you did, share it, review it, and most of all, put it into action. Until next time, tune in, level up, and talk tech.